I'll begin this video in saying I am greatly indebted to Dr. Michael Heiser and his work, The Unseen Realm. Dr. Heiser spends much of his time making scholarly work available for non-specialists. The material in this video draws extensively from his work, which is a combination of an existing body of scholarly knowledge, as well as his own reflections on the text. Genocide in the Old Testament has been defended on many levels and in many ways, but as always with the biblical text, it is best to simply understand what the text says, rather than interpreting the text in a way to make it palatable to the critic. In this video, we will do just that. Simply examine the text and the narrative, which many assert is one of Israel waging genocide against surrounding nations. This short video by default is a simplistic treatment of the topic. Much more could be said. The so-called genocide in the Old Testament is not a story of genocide at all. In the biblical text, it is a story of divine rebellion, the earthly manifestation of spiritual warfare. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Some modern Christians try to conceal the supernatural content of this text regarding who and what the sons of God actually are. This is ultimately precluded by the text. One Enoch, also called the Book of the Watchers, a major influence in Jewish thought as well as for the New Testament writers, expands on this theme from Genesis 6 at length, referring to rebellion of lesser Elohim within God's divine council, during which time these sons of God, or angels of God, descended from heaven, took on human form, and took unto themselves wives. All of the Jewish traditions up until New Testament times took a supernatural view of Genesis 6, 1-4. 2 Peter 2 and Jude likewise refer to the angels that sinned, again speaking to the time of Noah and the flood. This supernatural understanding of the text only fell out of favor in the 4th century CE, but the text clearly sets up a contrast: human daughters, divine sons. Let's talk briefly about two terms in the text, sons of God and Nephilim. A detailed explanation of these terms will take us far into the scholarly world and far beyond the scope of this video, so I'll keep it brief. In addition to Second Temple Jewish literature, as well as New Testament writers taking the sons of God in Genesis 6 to be divine, rebellious beings, the Old Testament does as well. In a passage where God judges the sons of God, he sentences them, divine beings though they are, to death. God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. I said, You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die, and fall like any prince. Clearly, the notion of divine but rebellious sons of God is not foreign to the Hebrew writers. What about Nephilim? Again, to summarize a large body of scholarly work on this topic, the term refers to giants. This is confirmed in the Septuagint reading. And so in Genesis 6, 1-4, we clearly have an account of offspring produced by the rebellion of some divine beings, known as sons of God. These offspring were ultimately known as Nephilim, and were giants, unusually tall, possibly around 6 to 7 feet according to readings from the Dead Sea Scrolls. This would certainly be a giant for an Israelite, who averaged around 5 feet tall. Further, these offspring wreaked havoc on the human race, responsible for a large number of atrocities recorded in the Book of the Watchers, or 1st Enoch. In Jewish theology, the abject wickedness infused into humanity came through these descendants of the Nephilim, whom the divine beings in rebellion against God used as a catalyst to guide the human race into the worst of sins, and ultimately to guide them in rebellion against God's plan for Israel. The giants and Nephilim theme is in Numbers as well. Canaan, through which we have gone to spy out, is a land that devours its inhabitants. The text refers to people who are of great height, and the Nephilim. Now we turn to the texts in the Old Testament that refer to devoting to destruction, the annihilation of nations that is so problematic. I'll use a couple of verses from the book of Joshua as a typical example. Joshua 11:7 refers to no survivors being left, and Joshua 11:20 refers to the Lord himself who hardened their hearts to wage war against Israel, so that he might destroy them totally, exterminating them without mercy. There are two terms in Hebrew which are used to convey total destruction: karem, which is the noun form, and karam, which is the verb form. As Dr. Heiser notes in Unseen Realm, the lemma karam, to utterly destroy, in the conquest accounts is used only of assaults in cities or locales that overlap with giant clan population clusters. Keeping this in mind, as well as that Numbers 13:33 refers to the Anakim as being descendants of the Nephilim, the targeted assaults of Joshua, once seeming like wholesale genocide, become apparent. And Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua devoted them to destruction with their cities. Karem, then, or devotion to destruction, was directed at a specific group of people within these regions. A similar analysis also holds for every other time devoting to destruction is mentioned. As Dr. Heiser notes, the picture that emerges when all the descriptions are woven together was that when Israelite soldiers encountered a member of the giant clans, or others known to be descended from those clans, they were under Karem. So the picture is complete. The Old Testament does command wholesale destruction of certain people groups, but not just any people. The term which refers to devoting people to destruction is attached to a very different concept of person. In the view of the Old Testament writers, these were not typical humans. They were descendants, not from humans created by God descended from Adam. They were another bloodline, descended from divine beings who rebelled against God and bore children through the daughters of men, beginning their own race in an attempt to defeat God's plan on earth for humanity. Through Israel, God would bless all of the nations descended through Adam's lineage, which he established. But also through Israel, God would eliminate the human descendants produced by an act of divine rebellion.